Welcome to another exploration, which will look at the old world majesty. All of the castles and turrets and antiquitech and streetcars. And you have the dome on the corner with the... Hold on a second. This isn't about Lima, Peru. In this video we're going to be taking a look at Lima and Peru, two smaller cities located in Indiana and Ohio. And we'll begin this exploration by looking into the city of Peru, Indiana, in Miami County. Not far away we have Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, and Chicago. In Wikipedia providing with a very bare bones history of the region. Founded in 1834, and then sort of jumps ahead. They do mention they did have a automobile maker in Peru, and a massive flood in 1913, basically wiping out what was a busy town, it says here, full of all these jobs. 100 factories in this town, we're told, trolley service, railroads, new hospitals, and circus, which employed 1,000 people. And we can look at the population demographics. Modern day, 11,000, 1900, 8,000, so not much of a difference, not much growth going on here over time. And now we take a look at some of old world Peru, Indiana. And like I always say, if you enjoy these videos, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more of these explorations. And if you feel so inclined to comment, that's always welcome as well. We have some interesting public schools in Peru for such a small town or city, whatever you want to call it. Nearby, also some interesting formations on the river. We'll see this again come up. And no doubt they will tell us this is a laying of the cornerstone for the courthouse, most likely. But you can see how built out it is here again in that early time period for such a small city. Looking like they would have the ability to accommodate a much larger population. Especially when you build in such a manner, you have to have quite a few skilled hands available, and we know that the major cities nearby are also going through very large construction. You can get the columns, basement windows, and all of the things we're used to seeing in these old world towns and cities. You have to build a post office like this. A quaint little train station with a bit of decoration, almost having a bit of a Japanese flair. What we might think of as that. And of course the churches, no expense spared on the construction of these churches in the old world. And the library again, the need to store the books and have a beautiful place for people to read. We have a couple inheritors here, or the New World narrative being set for us. The courthouse in Peru, Miami County Courthouse. Then we're given a timeline of 2 years, 1908 to 1910. And interesting too, when we see these modern depictions, we don't have the dome that we were seeing in the other photograph. And sometimes that is because of the angle of the photograph, and sometimes it's because the domes and spires have been removed from these structures. make of it what you will, as I like to say. But I definitely want to bring you the visuals for you to ponder on. And again, if you're from the area or know anything about the area, please add your flavor to the comment section. And there it is again. Really impressive dome. Interesting. An old structure, very old looking structure, very well built looking structure. And all the hallmarks of the old world with the decoration here. Now we have an old courthouse. The previous courthouse. Why on earth you would tear that sucker down? I mean, I think we know. There's no logic in it, but you can see all the tech here. Very interesting looking structure. And we have a depiction of it a little later on, scaled down, decapitated, as I like to say. There it is again. Old courthouse before they felt the need to build a new one. And a street scene showing us this similar stylings that we see everywhere else of the old world, circular corner. All sorts of tech as we go down the main drag here, built out sidewalks. And there's the formations I mentioned earlier, the pillars, they're calling it. Very interesting natural formations, they will tell us. First Baptist Church. Could have been a courthouse, decided to make it a church. Here we have the concrete bridge that was mentioned in the Wikipedia write-up. You have to wonder, was it a stone bridge? Was it covered in concrete? Who knows? But the arches are there, all indicative of the old world. Okay. And we're going to travel now from Peru, Indiana, over to Lima, Ohio. And you can see where Lima is located here, again, between Fort Wayne. We have Columbus, Dayton, Toledo, sort of a central point between these cities. And we have an early history here of Lima, the capital for Allen County. Early on, 1854, we have a cholera outbreak, eventually triggering the construction of the municipal water system, because they didn't solve that problem until 1886, they're saying here. They built the first shay-geared locomotive. We have paper mills, and then we also have striking oil here in 1885, May 19th, 1885, bringing John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil to the region. And for about a decade, the oil field in Lima was the largest in the US, we are told. And a quick look at the population demographics. Modern day, we're looking at 35,000. In 1900, 21,000. Much of what we're looking at will be in this time period here. So let's take a look at the visuals. And of course we start out with the church, probably missing the spires it once had here and here. Maybe back there as well. We have a street scene of the post office and the Masonic Temple. I suspect here and here. Looks like this is Hotel Manhattan at the time. And there's a good look at Lima with the streetcars and the teched out buildings. The fancy looking city for a population of about 20,000 at the turn of the 20th century. Very large looking structure here. I believe this is the Opera House, which we'll take a good look at. Looking, maybe, I can't really read this. Children's house, maybe? Not sure. Not sure. And a very ornate looking Lima in this postcard. You can see the bricked out streets. And looking like the courthouse here on the right. the Lima house with its fancy decoration, no doubt because they struck oil and had all sorts of money to spend, is what we'll be told. An early high school. And we got a close-up of the Masonic building, and you can see all the decoration going on here. And we have a hazy aerial view of the local asylum. They call it a state hospital, but it's used as an asylum. You can see how massive the structure is, giving you an idea of the size, especially for the size of the town, not making a lot of sense for that area. We know that the major cities nearby also had these types of structures, so you really have to wonder about those. And then of course some of the early ornate theaters. Looking at an old school, Horace Mann School. I did do a video on Horace Mann, one of the early founders of the normal schools and the early education system, really. So check that video out. I think it's titled The Inheritors series, one of the Inheritors videos, early on in my catalog. Definitely worth a look if you want to get a better understanding of the education system and how that was sort of put in place through these normal schools. This is an amazing structure, making no sense, and obviously looking quite old. And good size hotels for such a small city. Beautiful looking memorial building. And a fantastic entrance to the cemetery, of course, as is expected for any town, USA at the time. Also expected would be a YMCA, of course, with basement entrances that go down into the ground and very low windows. Public library, no doubt provided by Carnegie, they will tell us. Very wide streets too. Notice the real estate here from building to building. So much room. Obviously they had to make room for the streetcars. So the streetcars really had to be a part of the infrastructure when all of this was being put together. Not having the feel of something that sort of just came on the scene as a technology. And we know that the streetcars, the beginning of that narrative, according to the official narrative, the intention was for horses to pull them, and then magically electricity came along and the horses didn't have to pull them anymore, which is one of the most absurd aspects of our given historical narrative. I love how we get a cost on these structures. We also have the architect to clear up any doubt. And they're calling this their skyscraper. You have to wonder really how old are these buildings. Again, they're all sandwiched in between each other. So how can you say this one was built at a certain period of time? Were the adjacent ones just built right up next to? It all has the feel of something that was put together at a very close together time period. Like really it was intended to be built that way. There we have the state hospital again. That's where you put the crazies like us. Okay, here's the courthouse. And if we look at the details on the courthouse, it was built in 1881. Obviously no time period there, just 1 year. We get the architect, we get the style, we get the amount of money apparently that it cost. Remember, less than 10,000 people living in Lima at this period of time. All sorts of detail though given to us about this. They're saying here, built between 1881 and 1884, so it's interesting they don't put that there. And there's the cost, sorry, $360,000 even. And if you're familiar with my videos, you know that I don't think so. I think this is a much older structure, and this is a part of an inherited civilization. And if, in case you're starting to think that way too, they do provide us with this type of information, letting us know that in the 1830s this is how they were building, and then 10 years later this is how they were building, and then 40 years later they decided to build something like this. Your choice. You decide to believe what you want to believe, of course. I'm really just bringing you the visuals and maybe a seed of doubt. Alright, I'll admit that. A nice epic post office. YMCA. Memorial Hall. Saw that one already, I believe. YWCA. Fantastic looking deck up top here. Massive columns to support it. Here we have an early post office. Love the circular entryways. Very difficult to build in such a style. Old world. All of these buildings screaming at us. Old world. Now we get to the Opera House. Faro Opera House. I have a couple of photos here. We're going to take a closer look at it. Let's look at the inside here. So this is on the interior of the Opera House. And this is from a website called Cinema Treasures. I'll put the link in the description. The Faro Opera House opened as an opera house in 1882. We have the builder, of course, named after him. And they tell you that it closed permanently in 1934. And of course we can thank the Warner Brothers for using it as an auditorium, or using the auditorium for storage, sorry, until the mid-40s, and then eventually it was demolished in 1953 to make way for a Kresge's drugstore. Of course, why wouldn't you get rid of such a structure? There it is. This would be in a later time period. You can really see how beautiful the structure would have been. Here's an earlier time period. Very early on. You can see the difference here on the top and this part here. You can see how it's been chopped off again. We're starting to see this pop up as we look for it. There it is again. It hasn't been chopped off in 1890. Go back. Chopped off. As you do. Why else would you? Why else would you take the top off of that? The only reason I can think of, to be honest with you, is to hide a lot of the tech and the splendor of the old world structures. To scale them down so as to not catch our eyes. I could be wrong. Maybe it was because it was a hazard when the winds were up, like they tell us in these narratives, but I have my doubts, of course. Alright, I do have grainy postcards for you, but I'm trying to bring you everything I have, just a few more. I hope you've enjoyed this brief look into these two small cities in the midwestern United States. I think I'll probably do a video on Lima, Peru one of these days as well. Just a little teaser there at the beginning of the video for you. This is the St. John's Church before we sign off here. That's what it looks like in the modern day. You can see, you really get a sense of the magnitude of the construction. It's sometimes hard to tell with these old ones. And again, I suspect these have been decapitated as well. One more look at that beautiful opera house in Lima, Ohio. And we'll end with this structure. They call it the Met Building. Obviously, having been scaled back as well, we're missing the cone here. And I'm sure we're missing much, much more. So I thank you for joining me on this exploration. Stay tuned for more.